Thank you so much, Gwynne. If you'd like to take a seat, I'd like to invite the panel to take their seats here, please, for the next segment, which is Future of Connectivity, What We Can Expect from Space Exploration 6.0. This session is chaired by Elena Pisonero, President of Hispasat, including Gwynne, Dimitris from Zero to Infinity, Matteo from Space Systems Loral, Pierre-François from Airbus Defence and Space, and Juan Tomás from Satlantis. Elena, the floor is yours. Thank you. Woo!
Thank you, Liz. Good morning. Very welcome to this debate we want to face now about the space industry. We know you can go to Mars with 7 people, if you include Gwynne in the team, of course. And thank you for your very inspiring speech. Let's go to the business to try to see what can we do all together in order to really drive innovation and opportunities in the space industry. This industry is quite young. It's almost at least less than 50, more than 50 years ago, but is in a process of a very fast and deep transformation. And this transformation, think about what Gwynne told us just 5 minutes ago. It's not only customers, as it was in the past. We talk with customers to deliver services, transponders, services, whatever. But we talk about citizens being able to use the high-tech telecommunications we have in the world. And this is a terrific challenge, because all the citizens, not only customers, not only users, are demanding increasingly more connectivity, more bandwidth, more speed, more mobility, anywhere, anytime. Furthermore, I want to slow at this moment, they want all of this cheaper. Some are building businesses on this hypothesis, cheap, and some are promising that they are going to provide it for free. Imagine the challenge, because you know, and I'm going to tell you, that the satellite is quite expensive. So how we can provide, how we can answer such a challenge when, and we can't forget that satellites 50 years ago were a terrific, disruptive option to really change the way we thought about telecommunications. In terrestrial mode, some small changes, and satellites appear and change everything. That's what we are facing now. We are in a world of disruption. And this kind of world, status quo, is not an option. It's definitely not an option. And we can't rest on our own laurels. We are there. We are the best option, still, for sure, for the best high-quality broadcasting of audiovisual contents, even for very good connectivity in the world. Everybody, everywhere, can connect to the internet digital world we are living now. And so, what is the option? The traditional industry must embrace this open innovation. Álvarez Payete and Des as well talk about this open innovation. It's not only us, but you all that can create the new space. We are all in this new space, and we have to innovate together. So let's face this debate in 2 areas. I think there is, on one hand, how we can do what we do better, cheaper, so in a more efficient and clever way, and how we respond to the new market requirements. Those crazy ideas of you all demanding new services with the old infrastructures, with new infrastructure, combining every of them. And so we can talk of both things. And that's why I ask, and thank you all for saying yes. to come to join us and debate about how the old industry, sorry, we are in the 50s, and so we are old as the satellite, and how the traditional industry is dealing with this challenge. I feel in our meetings last in Paris 3 weeks ago, there is some anxiety, some nervous around what is going to happen, because all we are aware that something is going to happen, and we want to be there. We must be there. So as satellites operators, that is my case in Hispasat, we are trying to say, hey, SSL Loral, how Matteo Genna, please, an applause to Matteo Genna, that is coming from California as well, as when. We love you. We love Airbus too. Careful, we are close.
Thank you.
And others are very welcome to the debate, of course. How can we do it? How can we be more agile, more versatile, shorten the deadlines, being cheaper? What do you think about what we can do? Matteo?
Well, first, I want to thank you for inviting me. In terms of bringing the cost of satellites down, there's various aspects for the satellites that drive the cost, and a lot of it has to do with, as Gwynne mentioned, you can't fail when you deliver a product to your customer. You can't fail, and that's a very traditional part of the space industry. So what happens over time, and what we're seeing with a lot of the young engineers, is that they've grown up with what are called CubeSats. These are little satellites that these engineers are able to creatively make a mission, and they learn that they actually can do a mission on their own. They don't need a large company to do it. They can do it from the university. And so what happens is that they come in with a lot of new ideas, and they come in with a big push for technologies. So what we need to bring the satellite costs down are actually two things. One is access to space. The cost of access to space drives the whole industry. What these young engineers realize is that once you can get a CubeSat into space, and it costs on the order of less than $1 million total cost, satellite plus launch, you can do all sorts of things, and you can take a lot of risks. So if we can bring the cost to get access to space, which SpaceX has greatly contributed to that and is doing a lot more, that will actually open up the door to a lot more options. So we have very long life satellites. If satellites didn't have to last 15 years, one can significantly reduce the cost of the satellite. And you could also do even more, and that is if the life of a satellite if it's acceptable to have a life of a satellite down to, say, 5 years, you can refresh the technology. The rate of technology on terrestrial systems is enormous, right? It rapidly evolves. Space, once you have the asset, it has to last 15 years. So what we do in the meantime is we build in flexibility into the satellite to allow it to accomplish different missions over those 15 years. But ultimately, it's going to come down to lowering the cost to get to space, and then that will allow us to open up lots of possibilities for what a satellite can do.
Some disruption, please. What can we do? You had a good example in order to ask for the impossible. Why not? To dream about crazy ideas.
Yeah, we didn't actually start the company to be disruptors. What we did is we started the company because we saw a big gap in the ability to do more in space, but yet the cost of getting to space was so high. So we are considered the low-cost provider of launch. I still think it's expensive. You probably think it's expensive. You just did a deal with us. I think whenever you're talking multi-millions or tens of millions of dollars, that's not low cost, that's not cheap. So though we are the low-cost provider, it's important to not stay where you are there. It's really important to spin your product and spin your design. It's one of the reasons why we're working on reusability. If we could reuse both the first stage and the second stage again, all really you're talking about is the cost of the actual launch, which is fuel. And the cost of fuel for a launch is $1 million or $1.5 million. So you can imagine going from a $60 to $100 million launch to take your geostationary satellites up there to on the order of $1 million or so. That's really, I think that's not achievable, but you can get closer, certainly much closer than where we are now. Just reusing the first stage, we're hoping to drop our prices 30 to 40%.
Thanks, Gwynne. Let me introduce Pierre-François Delval. Bienvenue à Madrid.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be
From
there.
Airbus Defence and Space. He's coming from France. He's not too far, but he deserves an applause as well. So,
thank you.
bienvenue.
Thank you.
So what is your approach to such a corporation or European corporation dealing with this competence and trying to see what can we do better and cheaper, I insist.
I think you're right. We have to get it cheaper because we want space telecommunication to become much more of a utility and something which is all in our life. And as you mentioned previously, and Matteo also hinted on that, there are three levers that I think we have to address. There is the access to space, the cost of it. Clearly, having a much cheaper way to launch satellite will open complete new avenues to the way we design satellites. Satellites have always been designed somehow to best fit or match the launcher capabilities. So it's driven by the launcher capabilities and cost, and we will continue like that. That's clear for that. Electric propulsion was a way to do it, reduce the mass of the satellite so that we can get to cheaper launcher or do two satellites in one. Another way to do that is flexibility. We effectively have to change the paradigm of a geostationary satellite which has been designed and will stay the same for 15 years in orbit. Technology on the ground is evolving much, much faster. We can't just let that go. And for that, we are working on flexible payloads. We already have a number of flexible mission ongoing with Eutelsat, with SES, and we want to do more. The holy grail, I would say, there is what we call software-defined payloads. Basically, you can completely reprogram what you want to do with your satellites, even though it is there. A third axis is mass production. We are doing almost prototype every time, and we have to get to a place where we have more and more standard, more volume of production. As you know, on that standpoint, Airbus DS has partnered with OneWeb. We are going to build up a huge constellation of 900 satellites. That opens, again, new avenues in the way to do the satellites. And the fourth lever, I would say, is the way we work. I think again, space industry was a small world somehow. We were in a bit on our own. We need to open completely. We need to change the way we work with our customer. It's already coming, but we have to do it more proactively, concurrently, and not from a mission to RFP. We have to get more interaction. Same thing for our supplier. We should stop from getting top-down approach from system to equipment, but see what they can offer, what they can do to reduce their cost and build a system around. And also we have to open to non-space related companies, to startups. We need to open our culture and our technologies all over there. And,
Some idea? Well, no. before we go to new markets and new applications, I want to learn from you, the disruptors. I think we have two people very interesting for you. That are on my left, Juan Tomás Hernani, that is the CEO of Satlantis, that is working in order to launch small satellites. And I think that's what I said. We will talk about applications after a bit. But I want you well, yes, Juan Antonio is from the north of Spain, so he deserves, for the Basque Country, a big applause. Well, Juan Tomás, what I want you to tell us is how you see, and you know very well the space industry for some years, why to think differently, why to think about different kind of satellites in order to provide with new answers to the society. But what can we learn as industry from such an initiative as you push forward?
Okay, first of all, thanks for inviting me to the debate. Elena, I'm very pleased to be with all of you. I think the question is interesting because low cost and small satellites require that you think big. So it could be a contradiction, but low cost is never a strategy to position. It's a strategy to destroy. But then you have to see after the war what is next and where can you position yourself. So I think we follow exactly this route. So we want to provide through very cheap platforms and a continuous integration of sensoric in the small satellites, new services. That is high frequency where we can move with very many satellites, with constellations which are rich in the number, that if we are able to be in a point every 15 minutes, then we can open new fields of applications like security that were not present in the past. So I think if you want to think big, you have to understand that here our colleagues are very important because I think the big industry is the reference, and space has so many barriers from launching to operation to the components qualification, etc. So it is not like normal IT. It has very many barriers. So I think the winning strategy, in my opinion, is not for the big to think that they can do themselves in a different behavior, because that is already answered in many sectors. How can a big company develop a new business that contradicts the business model? You have to jump into another company and do it externally. And maybe you can integrate it in a while, but you cannot do it from inside. It's quite difficult. So this is our view, and we are fighting for having very big partners inside the company that can implement the dream we have, which is very big.
We will go further in detail, well, not too much time, but about how important it is to look for the right partnerships. I think is what these startups are looking for. Not only financing, but the right partners to finance and promote such a new chain of value that we have to make together. No? So, but last but not least, let me see, because your name is. I've heard you said that to me, that you came from Granada.
From Granada, from the south.
He's from the south, but his name is Dimitris Bountolos, from 0 to infinity. So, ole. So, Dimitris, we talked yesterday a bit in the Ayuntamiento de Madrid about that you try to launch payloads. Payloads. That's what we talk in the industry about. But payloads might be almost everything. Not for those who weigh more than 100 kilos, I'm afraid. So,
that's
Dimitris.
our reference. Thanks for the invitation and to the audience. We have to be disruptive because we want to be the enabler to that market. We know and we have assumed that the ecosystem is requesting the access to the connectivity, and we have put the focus over one small niche, which is the microsatellite, the nanosatellite. And our solution is a disruptive one. We want to launch the more efficient and cheaper launcher, utilizing a hybrid solution. Since 6 years ago, 0 to infinity, my company developed low-pressure balloons. We lift loads, we test, we gain experience. We feel very confident about that technology. And right now, what we have done is to mix that technology in order to unlock and decompose the problem. We want to lift the rocket and launch the rocket for 20 kilometers, that near space field, trying to reduce several of the constraints, and since the beginning introduce the reutilization. We have the perception that the cost efficiency in that track is obtained introducing a disruptive piece. Our disruptive piece is the hybrid approach. We have in our figures and in our studies the assumption that the reduction of the cost is something that is possible to be achieved. The market is very complex, the environment is close, but reference like the SpaceX is transferring to us the inspiration that the momentum is really interesting because they have transferred to us the guide, the reference, and the customers, all these audiences requesting thousands of small devices. We want to be the shortcut to orbit with the project Blue Star and create that first hybrid solution that will introduce the balloon at the first step, launching the second step in a reutilizable approach. It's challenging, for sure, that the failure is still there, but at least if we fail in the initial cycles, we will demonstrate that the failure itself is different. Because from decades, the satellites, it doesn't matter of the size, has been launched with rockets, different size, with different efficiencies, but a different approach than the one that we are putting over the table as incumbent in the market. I think that is interesting for those final clients, for those telecommunication operators, for those members of the ecosystem that want to accelerate that position in a new market that is exploding day by day, as everybody's seeing.
Okay, I think there are many things we can do, and we must do to improve satellites and take the most the advantage of who for sure is the protagonist of the space. But let's move to the new markets a bit. And I would like to ask Gwynne, because with your presentation, what was initially the idea of the SpaceX? Initially was to go to Mars?
It was.
This is the point. To go to Mars or try to build new launchers, new vehicles, reusable or whatever, because what I think it's, you can have an infrastructure or business at the very beginning, and you can transform it to do with this infrastructure different things. But you said that initially that was the dream?
Yes, the vision, we started the company to develop the capability, the transportation systems, ultimately to get people to Mars. But the market for Mars is undeveloped. I think the market for putting humans in space, whether you're at low Earth orbit, the moon, or Mars, the market is not there. So what you need to do is work on your technology and provide interim products that service an existing market. And so satellite transportation, obviously an existing market. It has been for decades. With the advent of the International Space Station opening up cargo and crew services to commercial companies, there was yet another new market. So we've tailored our products to address existing markets, but continue to spin the technology to ultimately get to Mars.
That's the question. I don't know if we have a video about all the possibilities for satellites, because my idea was to say, well, we had the satellite to really have an important breakthrough of telecommunications in order to have this universal coverage, full connectivity, but mainly to broadcasting, and then with the emerge, and not emerge, the revolution of internet, to really be able to connect the people around the world to do things. And then things are huge opportunities about what we can do with satellites, with different kinds of satellites, so different kinds of launchers, and different ways of working in the traditional manufacturers, but at the same time, new services, including new people around who are going to be integrated in this new net that is trying to provide services hand in hand with citizens. And that's what you mentioned before about security or Earth observation, and I'm going to say something after. What is your view about this, Juan Tomás? Because the question is to do with this satellite that is in the space that we can launch, we can do it cheaper, small, more agile. So that's what these two guys are thinking about.
I mean, to me the key.
What's your idea, your vision?
To me, the key issue could be called integration. So we know everything about...
the video, some commercial on the back. So.
We know everything about the territory. If we see what is the digitalization that we have in a good part of the world, we will see that we know each centimeter of the territory. So I think the key issue is to place schemes of extra information that we can integrate with existing, not only in terms of the geographical information systems, but also in terms of online communications, that transponders that can identify events, so that this global picture of space and Earth can provide big data that has a tremendous power to solve new challenges. I think this is the issue. Again, I think we have to think big.
So for sure, because I have Pandura there, we are working together in Hispasat to really have not only communications in terms of defense, we have secure communications for many, many things that look bad, but we have to do around Hermes and so on. They are crucial for the security of all of us. But at the same time, we are very active in the field of Earth observation. It's very important to look for these great images, to do security, do many, many other things. And we have initiatives as well in space constellations in terms of sensors, and try to do what you have said. And this is very important. I want to highlight this because it's a big, big field of opportunities. That is to combine images and data through satellites. Will further, for sure, the need of greater connectivity, but this is a full range to merge space and big data to really a potential for development that is huge. It's what Juan Tomás says, is what we are working in Hispasat to really have this possibility to work on big data all over the world. Imagine connecting different ships everywhere and try to see what we can do. I think there is a wide range of opportunities you can exploit, and we invite you to do it. But let me ask the manufacturers, because we talk a lot about what are the opportunities for startups to help you do this open innovation you need to make these satellites you do remarkably well, even better, and this agility and so on. What do you think, Matteo?
So we're, SSL is very fortunate in that we're in the heart of Silicon Valley. We're surrounded by an environment, an ecosystem of innovation. What that does is that we're always, let me say it this way. So of the employees within SSL, everyone under 30, the majority of them are set to start their own company at any moment. That's sort of the mentality of the engineers you get when you're in Silicon Valley. Everyone just believes they can start their own company. And so what that does is for us, what that means is looking at these engineers and working with them to actually come up with these new ideas. We won't invent everything internally. That would be silly to think that all ideas would come internally. So we also look outside, and there's many companies within Silicon Valley that have a lot of new space applications. So we don't limit ourselves to only Silicon Valley, but we are looking outside to see new ideas, new innovations. We've teamed up with other companies. We're building Earth observation satellites now. And what that does is that it helps actually inspire a lot of the engineers. You know, engineers want to do new stuff. They want challenges. That's why they went into space, because it's hard. That's what they love about it. And so going into these new ventures, whether it's from inside or whether from outside, is actually is very motivating to our. And so as a company, we actually are very forward-looking, working with lots of different companies to see what they can bring, what we can bring. It's not always money. It's not always that they need money. Sometimes they need validation. Sometimes they just need credibility. Sometimes they need a thermovac chamber. I mean, it's all sorts of things that we can bring for them.
Okay, so it's Silicon Valley plus Las Ventas. So let's go to Airbus. What do you think are coming the opportunities from?
I think
which are the main areas to try to provoke some thinking around?
Well, there is clearly a number of areas ongoing in terms of partnering with startups, new company, more innovative than we are in Airbus. We really see that big corporations shall not be opposed to startups. They are really complementary. They shall work better together. We believe that corporation can bring effectively the resources, but also the experience, the heritage. But we need also to have, I would say, new ideas, new bloods, and we try to create, and that's what we did for OneWeb, a small team that is dedicated to that new way of doing the business, and from that bubble, if I can say, will disseminate through the company, and we want to do more and more of that. We have in Airbus several startup accelerators which are being put in place because we want to effectively get to access to, I would say, to these new ideas, to these disruptive technologies, but also, I would say, collaborate and do it together and disseminate through the company. So I think that's really a model where, rather than being segregated, we shall really do some co-working on all of that, and I believe that's the real way to do it. We have plans of building space telecom stations in space. Rather than launching satellites that are already finished, we can launch it by pieces like was done for ISS, and then assemble exchange modules, tug it from one orbit to another. There are plenty of plans for which we have ideas, we have concept, but we need a new disruptive approach to come, and that's where cooperation with exactly that's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Okay, small provocation because we are run out of time, and
we are very sensible of the necessities of the manufacturers, but also to the final users. We know that we need to introduce in the dimension of what we need to launch new variables in order to transfer freedom to the designers, freedom to the new antennas, freedom to that new environment where the connectivity is going to be a must. And that's the reason why we are trying to introduce in all the value chain new disruptive approaches in order to unlock the project. But for sure, what we have in our company crystal clear is that the request of the final users, the request of the markets is going to transfer to us the necessity to unlock the global connectivity, thinking not just in the North countries, on the developing countries, thinking in Africa, thinking in many areas where the necessity of the connectivity is a must, and that for sure has to be achieved through the space. So,
thank you, Dimitri.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you. Many thanks for your ideas. I think that what is clear is that we have done a lot, but we have a big challenge to really reinvent this industry. And the way to do it is with you, with the startups trying to bridge in the gap between what is thinking big, thinking disruptive, and the industry that is going to promote this. It's in our DNA to do it. We were disruptors 50 years ago, and we want to be protagonists of this disruption once again. So we need this fresh air, this new way of thinking. And let me throw a challenge that Antonio Abad is around there. Antonio, hello. Hello. He is a big engineer. He is the CTO of Hispasat. We were thinking about new solutions, new situations. But I'm going to read because he can tell it properly, but I'm an economist trying to do many things in my life. But I encourage you to take part of this space odyssey and try to eliminate the artificial barriers that are preventing the Moore law from applying to satellites too. It's interesting if you master the laws of gravity as we did with electromagnetism, we are going to change the world as SpaceX wants to do. We are going to be together, and I invite you and encourage to embark in this Odyssey journey we are going to build together. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias.